Hello and welcome here to the Wine with Jimmy channel. Thank you for stopping by. This is a channel which I dedicate to wine education to really help you maximize your enjoyment from every drop. I produce a lot of videos here about understanding key grape varieties, wine regions, doing gastronomical pairings, lots of stuff, key recommends from producers and retailers, supermarkets, and so on. Here I'm presenting a series called Mastering Germany, looking at an Eastern German region called Saale and Unstrut. The series Mastering Germany is a part of the Wine with Jimmy Club. This is a monthly subscription service where you can register and pay just £3.99 a month to get access to a lot of key presentations, recommends, and professional tasting notes to help you with your enjoyment and your studies if you are going through the world of wine. You'll find a link for the Wine with Jimmy Club in the description of this video. Let's talk about the Saale and Unstrut region. And in this, I am going through the villages and vineyards. The previous 3 parts are only available to those of you who subscribe to my Wine with Jimmy Club. Okay, so let's talk about, first of all, the region. We are here in this red area of Saale and Unstrut, which is a fragmented, scattered landscape for viticulture, about 850 hectares on those 2 rivers, the Saale and the Unstrut. Where those 2 rivers meet, the confluence is the city of Naumburg, and it's kind of here where we're focusing on most of the viticulture. Okay, let's take a look at this Google Earth video of Saale and Unstrut. Go look at the region overall. There's the Saale River to begin with, which is a very long river, 426 kilometers, about 265 miles long, and it flows into the Elbe. And there is the Unstrut, which is 119 miles long, 192 kilometers in total, flowing into the Saale. There's the region. We're going to talk about the Bereichs, the major Bereichs to begin with. And first up on the board is going to be the Werder Bereich, which is the one closer to Berlin. Then we have the Bereich Thüringen, which has villages like Kaatschen in it, for example. Dachsberg is quite an important vineyard site there. We then have the site of Mansfelder Seen as well. And we go to the important one, though, the Schloss Neuenburg, where we will begin our journey here with Vitzenburg. There's Vitzenburg, so it's on a sharp bend of the Unstrut, and Schlossberg is the key vineyard on an outcrop of rare coloured sandstone, bunt sandstein, and gypsum limestone mix. Frühburgunder and Silvaner famed from this dramatic site. Next up, the village of Karsdorf, which is on a straighter part of the Unstrut. We have Hohe Gräte, the deep Gipskeuper and calcareous marl soil location here, dotted around that you'll see, which is a quarried site. Beautiful Weissburgunder, Riesling, Silvaner, and Spätburgunder there. The village of Freyburg is next, known as the sect giant or infamous sect giant of Rotkäppchen, Little Red Riding Hood. The vineyard here, famed though, is Edelacker. Up to 45% slopes, chalky fossil rich limestone, and lots of terraces. It's a dramatic site, as you'll see there. The stone wall was laid end to end with total 10 kilometers. That's 6.2 miles. Quite crazy. Then we come to Goseck, which has had evidence of human occupation for a long time. The vineyard here is Dechantenberg, which is a monopole of Klosterfurter, south-southeast facing iron-rich red sandstone, Riesling and Weissburgunder from this site in green. The village of Naumburg, lovely place. It has a gorgeous cathedral to it. And we're looking at Steinmeister, arrayed along the Saale River, a small portion inside the city as well of Naumburg. Here you have shell limestone producing Riesling, Grauburgunder, Weissburgunder, Spätburgunder in this location. And in Thuringen is Kaatschen, right? I mentioned this earlier, and the Dachsberg facing south-southwest, Kuiper and shell limestone soils here. There's an old plot of Silvaner vines planted in 1927 in that southern section, quite exquisite. And there you'll see that actually the Saale-Unstrut wine region is split into what we call 4 districts or 4 Bereiche. You see Mansfelder Seen, Schloss Neuenburg, Thuringen, and Werder. They are your ones. Now on this map, you'll just find the 3 identified because Werder is further away. Now, the most notable vineyards and villages are concentrated in the central Schloss Neuenburg area. So that's the place where we're going to focus on 90% of the villages and videos in this. So we begin our journey in Vitzenburg. Now this sits on a sharp bend of the Unstrut River that you'll see on your picture there that I've shown you. That's that red, the blue river at the bottom, that bend coming through here. So this is the closest places here are Kurfürth and Nebre in terms of villages and towns nearby. Now, this beautiful, small, concentrated village is visible from afar above the Unstrut Valley. And you'll see that there's a lovely castle here, and that's Vitzenburg Castle. Now, it's the late 17th century residence of the von Hesslers, the Schulenburg, and later Munchhausen families. There's parks which originally belonged to the castle, vineyards, of course, a garden pavilion and village church built in the early 18th century. They are all outside of the castle today. The vineyards that I'm focusing on here is the Schlossberg, which are very small, located to the south of Vitzenburg, the village, and around the castle. Hence why we call this Castle Hill, Schlossberg. Let's have a look at it. So Schlossberg slopes down over some bunt sandstein, which is coloured red sandstone that you'll find. You'll see some of that slightly sort of pinkish red sandstone walls on the right hand side of that picture, and then it also has a bit of limestone gypsum mix as well with some dolomitic limestone. Silvaner is an important variety here, as is Frühburgunder, early Burgundy, a great variety famed actually in places like the Ahr region. We now come down more towards the east and southeast, where we come to Karsdorf. So this is located again on the Unstrut River, and the vineyards here generally face sort of west or southwest. So you'll see you've got a number of the vineyards dotted along the hills, which are running roughly from the northwest to the southeast. Across the river is Wetzendorf. Freyburg is towards the southeast, and Nebre and Vitzenburg are both towards the west or slightly northwest. The vineyard we're going to look at here is the Hohe Gräte, And Hohe Gräte has gypsum marls, which are quite deep, and then some interspersed calcareous marls, so limestone marls, with rocks of formed metamorphic quartz, quartzite. It's quite steep. It's generally south facing, but there is one that's more southeast facing. And the vineyard has some ungrafted vines planted in the late 19th century, so on their own roots and unharmed by the menace of phylloxera. The remains of ramparts are above the vineyard too. You can't see them so much in this picture, but they're still visible today, and that's the inspiration for the name of Hohe Gräte, as they stand out against the horizon like a gate, like bones of a fish. Now, the vineyards which face south are at altitudes here of about 110 to 220 meters, and the slope is 20 to 45% gradient. There's about 15 hectares in total here, and the original core part of Hohe Gräte is solely owned by the Lutzkendorf family. You will find varieties like Silvaner, Weissburgunder, Portugieser, and Pinot Noir here. We now come down to the important town of Freyburg, which is now even more southeast down the Unstrut that you'll see here. So Karsdorf is off to the north west. Naumburg is off towards the south. So here you find Freyburg on the Unstrut River. This is actually very well known for the giant sect house, which is called Rotkäppchen, which means little Red Riding Hood, but it's the big sect producer here. But the key thing about this town and why it has a bit more of a collection of vineyards is it's actually in this kind of almost amphitheater shape, which makes it a bit warmer. And in fact, the annual sunshine hours here are similar to the Freyburg in Baden. So Freyburg and Freyburg, quite similar sunlight, despite being 375 miles apart. And we need to talk about the prime site that you'll see there's a small spattering here, but the main one here just south of Freyburg, and this is Edelacker. Edelacker. So this is the premier site of all Saale-Unstrut. It's south-southwest facing and up to 50% steep gradient slopes on this muschelkalk, chalky fossil-rich soil. There's also some bunt sandstein here as well, so some coloured sandstone. The picture you see there is of the upper portions, which are dramatically terraced and have been since the Middle Ages. And in fact, there's so much terracing here. If you lay all of the walls together end to end, it's going to be about 6 miles long. It's also got a lot of producers. Around 40 growers cultivate some 65 different plots. There are also lots of these little houses that you see on the right-hand side, around 100 of them. Little buildings and huts, some very much in disrepair, some looking as majestic as the one in your picture. These have been preserved and they are national traditional treasures today. So this vineyard has not gone through vineyard reorganization. These little houses have been kept. So Flurbereinigung has not happened here. The most famous one is the one you see here, built in 1774 for a local tax collector and includes a barrel vaulted cellar, which is quite fascinating. Look out for Silvaner, Weissburgunder, Spätburgunder, Chardonnay and Zweigelt in this very famed site. The yellow star means iconic, by the way, on the previous slide. We come then to Goseck. This has an old solar observatory, which is, I think, one of the oldest in the world, a wood structure, which it's known for. This is now towards the southeast of Freyburg, towards the northeast of Naumburg, and it's towards the west of Weissenfels. And you're looking here at this one vineyard located very close to the river of the Saale, and this is Dechantenberg. Let's have a look at Dechantenberg. This is a monopole, which is terraced. So this is the small plot of Dechantenberg. It is a monopole which is owned by the cloister, Klosterpforte, south-southeast on this Rote Bunt Sandstein, and famed for Riesling and Weissburgunder. You'll see a label of the Riesling there on your picture. Then we finally come down to Naumburg, which is sitting to the southeast of Freyburg and kind of to the southwest of Weissenfels. And this is sitting proudly on the confluence of the Unstrut, which comes down here, and the Saale, and where they meet, it continues as the Saale, and the Saale will then go and feed into the Elbe River. So this is really important. It's seen as the kind of identity of Saale-Unstrut, the birthplace of the region. The UNESCO World Heritage designated cathedral here, which was built in the early Gothic and late Romanesque period, is wonderful. Lovely, gorgeous sculptures and paintings here. The vineyards are around the perimeters of the town city. You'll see here, we're going to talk about Steinmeister as our major one here. So Steinmeister. This is mostly along the Saale River. Some of it's within the city of Naumburg as well. And some parcels are on a karstic spring. Soils here are muschelkalk, so shell limestone. And there's a little bit of red here, Spätburgunder, but mostly Weissburgunder, Grauburgunder and Riesling located here. So we now leave this Bereich and we come to a separate Bereich, which is Thüringen. And we're looking at Kaatschen, which lies on the frantically meandering Saale River. Look at this, as it meanders through here. Kaatschen is a tiny village. The vineyards are actually larger than the village, as this widens around here past Großheringen, Kleinheringen, and towards Saale. The vineyard we look at, which is our final one before the Google Earth video to recap, is Dachsberg. And there are multiple non-contiguous parcels of Dachsberg, but the real Dachsberg is located about 500 meters southeast of the mini village of Kaatschen. It faces south-southwest with a moderate slope and weathered loam and clay soils with a little bit of marl, Kuiper, and shell limestone muschelkalk. Very famed for Silvaner, planted in 1927. The bottle you see here is of Goseck, and it's their Riesling from this site. And look at those beautiful stoned walls you'll see in the picture. Thank you very much for your time and attention. I do hope that you've enjoyed this video. If you have any comments or questions, perhaps you have visited the cities like Naumburg, for example, Freyburg, you've been to some of these vineyards, or you like the wines, or maybe you are looking for some recommends about restaurants, places to stay, you'd like to share your experiences, please do get in touch and comment below this video. Make sure you click like and subscribe. I've been Jimmy Smith, Dankeschön, and until next time, ciao.